Thank you for joining us here today. Before I begin, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection with these lands. In my over 40 years of being in Calgary, living in Calgary, and during my 15 years on City Council, I can tell you that I've seen our downtown go through tremendous growth as well as downturns, but nothing like the prolonged series of challenges that exist here today. The crash in the price of oil and the COVID-19 pandemic have led to a hollowing out of Calgary's downtown core. But even before the pandemic, investment dropped, the economy shrank, and we had massive layoffs across the energy sector in 2019 as companies like Ovintiv, formerly known as Encana, packed up and left this province. The pandemic has only accelerated this trend, with Husky disappearing in a merger and Shaw soon to follow after being acquired by Rogers. According to today's job numbers, Calgary's unemployment rate still remains among the highest in the country, and according to some estimates, roughly 30% of all downtown office spaces sits empty. And it's been reported that 4 of those buildings are completely vacant. All of this despite Jason Kenney, the UCP's promise that their corporate handout would fill the office towers in downtown Calgary. In June 2020, the UCP doubled down and accelerated that handout. At the time, Kenney said companies would be, quote, irresponsible not to consider moving their operations to Alberta. But since then, the total number of head offices in this city has dropped from 117 to 102. 117 to 102. The UCP promised a plan for downtown last September, but it's April and there still hasn't been a plan. And all the UCP could muster in their latest budget for downtown Calgary was a paltry $5 million, something the CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce called, quote, a drop in the bucket, and also, quote, absolutely inadequate. Despite the challenges facing Calgary currently, we have great strengths, and we want to restore the vibrancy to downtown. We can use those strengths strategically here. Calgary has consistently ranked as one of the best cities in the world. And when combined with our young and diverse and educated population, along with the innovative and an entrepreneurial spirit we have here, we have an opportunity to show the world that Calgary's is going to be, again, the best city to live and work and play. But in order to do so, we need bold and innovative ideas, which takes us to today and the release of our strategy to revitalize downtown Calgary. This is our strategy, and now I'm going to turn things over to Rachel Notley so she can continue talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you as well for all of your work on this strategy. This is a really fulsome plan, and it's the product of a lot of time and effort by many on our team, led by Joe Ceci on behalf of the people of this city. Calgary's downtown has long served as a fundamental part of Alberta's economy, and our activity within it has generated tremendous wealth for the people living here and, quite frankly, the people living across this province. And as Joe mentioned, the crash in the price of oil, coupled with the pandemic, have been devastating for downtown Calgary. At the same time, our province's economy is now in the midst of structural changes. And with the while the recent spike in oil prices is welcome, we also know that we need to look at other sectors to help drive growth in Calgary and Alberta in the long term. So while these factors create uncertainty and present an enormous challenge, they also present an opportunity to reimagine Calgary. And it will, quite frankly, as we do that work, it will take support from all 3 orders of government in concert with the private sector to build the physical and the social infrastructure to support a thriving modern economy in Calgary and across Alberta. It will also take time and hard work, But with our entrepreneurial spirit and our greatest resource, which is our people, we can restore vibrancy. We can bring a new energy into Calgary's downtown, and we can continue to generate prosperity for the people of this city and for the people of this province. So today, as Joe said, we are releasing our latest in a series of proposals through the Alberta's Future Project. This plan, titled Bringing New Energy to Downtown Calgary, contains a series of 10 proposals to revitalize and breathe new life into the city's core. This revitalization will not only address empty buildings, but it will also bring people downtown to work, to play, and to live. And as such, the solutions that we are putting forward are wide-ranging in their scope. So first of all, what we will do is we will partner with the city. The City of Calgary is developing and already starting to implement its own plan, and it makes sense for us to assist their work rather than trying to double it or recreate it. So, our first proposal in here is to support their existing office conversion plan and match their initial investment with a further $100 million from the province of Alberta. In addition, we would match the city's initial $55 million plan for capital investments which are designed to attract people downtown. For instance, they're looking at making improvements to Stephen Avenue, establishing a downtown public market, and redesigning and rebuilding the Olympic Plaza. This work would be matched by the $55 million from the province of Alberta, were we to be in government. Second, there are also a series of steps that the province can take by leveraging programs that are already within provincial jurisdiction to support, in a targeted way, the revitalization of downtown Calgary. For instance, we must make economic diversification a critical priority of the work of the government of the province of Alberta. By doing so, we attract more investment and activity downtown. But to support diversification, we need to set the right conditions to attract investment. So this means reinstating the Alberta Investor Tax Credit and reinstating the Interactive Digital Media Tax Credit. As well, we are proposing to create an Alberta Venture Fund that would invite all Albertans to invest directly in the growth of Alberta-based early-stage companies, startups, and scale-ups. As an aside, we were very disappointed yesterday to see the UCP kill our private members bill that would have driven that initiative. As part of this proposal, let me say, if elected, we will bring that plan back to life. But going forward, and particularly in relation to downtown Calgary, we can do more to build a globally competitive innovation ecosystem that brings together civic, public, and private actors to build innovation networks. Now, innovation districts are areas where post-secondaries, entrepreneurs, companies, startups, business incubators, accelerators are in close proximity to facilitate collaboration and innovation. Successful cities across the world have all established innovation districts. Now, the fact is, Calgary has many of the necessary elements already for an innovation district downtown, particularly in the area around the new Platform Innovation Centre. And there are already examples of this type of collaboration in Calgary at places like CDL Rockies and the recently announced Energy Transition Hub. However, one key piece that is missing in downtown Calgary to create a true innovation center is the intentional presence of post-secondary institutions. Our plan here specifically commits to correct that mistake. We will work with post-secondaries to have them relocate and to be part of that innovation district ecosystem. Now, in addition, our proposal also includes several strategically targeted efforts to increase the kind of provincial supports and services that will work to attract people to live and visit downtown. These include creating more childcare spaces downtown, investing in more mental health services downtown to address safety concerns in many areas, and leveraging pre-existing provincial funding for affordable housing to help increase the conversion work that I'd already mentioned and to increase the level of affordable housing that's contained within that conversion work. Finally, we're putting forward a number of standalone proposals. The fact is, the pandemic and the economic downturn has hurt small businesses in Calgary. It's hurt them downtown. It's left many existing storefronts sitting empty. So that's why we are proposing a vacancy and a storefront revitalization grant to help small businesses move into downtown and take up empty space, or for current businesses to revitalize existing space. In addition, we need to attract residents and visitors downtown outside of regular work hours to increase vibrancy by improving nightlife and tourist attractions. So we will furthermore establish grants to fund additional events, festivals, or amenities like farmers markets and other pop-up businesses to enhance traffic of residents and visitors into Calgary's core. Lastly, we know that public transit is, of course, vital to connecting people to the downtown core. Now, we know the C train has served this function for decades, and the construction of the Green Line will connect tens of thousands more Calgarians to the downtown while creating 20,000 construction and permanent jobs in the process. That's why our government committed funding to build the Green Line at the outset and have since then fought hard to protect that project ever since. Now, more recently, a train line from Calgary Airport to Banff has been proposed that's expected to include a station in downtown Calgary and would boost tourism to the city as well as to the mountains. If the project is approved, we will begin exploring a cost-sharing agreement for the Calgary-Banff rail line between the province, the Bow Valley Corridor Alliance, and the federal government. So, those are our proposals. There's a lot of them. They're ambitious, but it's necessary. Calgary's downtown, it's a complex problem, and at times it can seem daunting to solve. But there is hope. Calgary's a fantastic place to be, and together we can make it better. I want Calgary to be a beacon to Canadians and to people all over the world. A shining example of prosperity, equality, community, and opportunity. A city that takes risks and acts boldly with confidence in its future. Basically, a new energy for downtown Calgary. The result, if successful, will be felt well beyond just the top floor towers. Instead, it will be felt in every office and every storefront downtown, and through these, it will be felt throughout the city of Calgary. If we're fortunate to form government in the next election, this is what we will deliver to the people of this city. So thank you, and we'd be very happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, we'll start with questions in person, then we'll move to the line.
So we heard from Calgary's mayor, Jenny Bondeck, with her response to the federal budget and what it lacked for the city of Calgary. So I'd like to get your perspective on what you think the federal budget had or did not have.
Well, there's no question that the federal budget did not reflect that they had turned their attention specifically to the issue of downtown Calgary. And so we didn't see a lot there that was targeted to address that issue. I think it's true that the big investment in affordable housing may well be something that we will see targeted to help downtown Calgary if we have a plan in place. If we have a strategy for attracting that money, if we have partners at the table who are ready to leverage that funding. And that's what this does. So I think there is opportunity to get more support from the federal government to address some of the concerns that are identified in here as we move forward on revitalizing Calgary's downtown. But I think that, you know, we can't be waiting for Ottawa. We need to roll up our sleeves and take the initiative ourselves. The city's done a lot of hard work. The provincial government so far has been sitting on the sidelines, ignoring the issue. And what this is an effort to not only make commitments that we would follow through, but to drive the conversation and to bring everybody along to the important task of revitalizing and rebuilding Calgary's downtown.
And as a follow-up and to clarify, I'm Stephanie Thomas from CTV Calgary. One component that we are hearing from our viewers, from our friends and family here in Calgary, is that going to downtown is feeling increasingly less safe, and that safety concerns and crimes, specifically crimes against women, are happening with an increasing rate in the Calgary downtown and in the Beltline and that sort of thing. So what kind of steps do you think are necessary to address that?
Well, I mean, that's a really important question, and of course it's a very complicated and complex issue, but there's no question safety has to be part of the issue, because people have to feel comfortable coming to downtown, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. But what some of the issues or some of the things in this plan will address it, in that we're talking about bringing more people downtown, creating more open public spaces, creating activity outside of 5 o'clock when the office is closed, so that it's safe to be here when you're walking around getting lunch, and it's safe to be here at 10 o'clock after work. And part of the way you do that as well is that you bring more people down here who live here, and you make it a neighborhood, not just a daytime destination. And then finally, you provide the kind of social supports that we talk about in here to provide support to some of the folks down here who need greater stability and support themselves. And through that, we're talking about greater mental health supports, those kinds of things. But we know that it's a complex problem, and that's not all there is to it. And that, I will say too, this raises another point. This is a set of proposals. The next steps here are for people to take a look at it, and for them to tell us what we're missing, and what more we can do. And Joe's going to be doing a more consultation on it at the end of this month and in the next month. And we're inviting people to take a look through it and tell us what we got right, what we could do more of, what we could do differently, all those things. Because this is an exciting project, and we have to move it along.
Any other questions in person?
Why do you think the UCP haven't had a series of proposals?
Well, the UCP has been very, very focused on its own internal drama. And so they haven't been really showing up to work in a big way for the last 10 or 11 months. So that's part of the problem. I also think, we've heard from the finance minister that diversification is a long-term luxury. We've heard from the finance minister that this isn't their problem. This is the city's problem. But that kind of short-sighted, ambivalent thinking is the kind of thing that results in communities and provinces missing opportunities. The world is moving quickly. We have a challenge. There's a lot of change going on right now. We have to grab hold of the reins and lead what's going on. We cannot put our head in the sand and wait for other people to do things, because we'll miss opportunities and we'll lose opportunities, and our communities will be left on the wayside as a result.
Which, further to what you've said about the relationship between Mike Slamington, CBC. Further to the relationship between the mayors, how has Kenny's relationship with the mayors been, and do you think yours would be better?
Well, I think we know that this UCP government, collaboration is not one of the principles that drives pretty much anything that they do. And we've seen that as a result on many levels. We've seen the province of Alberta miss out, and communities throughout the province miss out on funding opportunities that required partnership with the federal government. And of course, we've seen an increasingly combative relationship with our municipal leaders, people who are, closest to the grassroots, people who are closest to the people in their community, and yet their voice is not heard and it's not respected by this UCP government. And so the result then is that you're not in a position to be at the table having solution-based conversations that are based on shared respect. This is a government that started its term by ripping up the big city charters, which were the product of negotiations between our government and Edmonton and Calgary. And if those charters were still in place, this work would be much farther along the road of being completed.
Okay, we'll now move to questions on the line. Just a reminder to use the raise hand function if you're joining by Zoom, and *9 if you're joining by phone. First caller is Paula Tran. Go ahead, Paula, your line should be open.
Hi. This question is for anyone, but I was looking at the summary of proposals that you have on your website, and I was wondering if you can expand on mental health and addiction supports, especially since the UCP cut a lot of harm reduction programs in the past.
Well, so mental health supports and addiction supports and anti-poverty supports and transitional housing supports. I mean, these things, you can't separate them out really. It's a suite of wraparound services that give people the kind of anchor and stability that they need in order to live better lives. And we've seen Albertans attacked, the most vulnerable Albertans attacked on that front in a number of different ways by this UCP government over the last 3 years. So in that part of our proposal, what we are saying is that we would develop a comprehensive, I mean, we talk about mental health supports, which are important and critically part of it, but we talk about just generally ensuring that we provide the kind of supports particularly in downtown Calgary, that allows us to help people where they live and give them the kind of supports that will result in them being able to live better lives for themselves and also make a different kind of contribution to the community they live in.
Did you have a follow-up, Paula?
Yes, I do. So the proposal talks a lot about diversification of the economy, and I was just wondering how you're going to attract different sectors, like the tech sectors, to come to Calgary instead of cities like Vancouver and Toronto, other than funding.
Well, that's a really good question, and it's a complicated answer, but let me just start with a few of them. First of all, we have heard from so many people in the tech sector that they literally were, they had their moving vans packed up and they were on their way over to Calgary, and then the UCP cut the digital media tax credit, and they braked and they stopped in a province that still had something like that. So that's one thing. Second thing, which would be not entirely unique but far more unique to Alberta relative to other provinces, is our proposed Alberta Venture Tech Fund. This is an opportunity. This creates an investment pool for Albertans to invest in tech, and that's something that would really help attract startups here. And so that was something that got killed yesterday by the UCP at a private members committee, unfortunately, and something that should actually be explored, because we've heard from those in the tech sector that this would be a great way to attract people. The third thing, of course, is that we need skilled talent here in Alberta. We need those entrepreneurs to come to this city. How do we make sure we've got that? Well, first of all, we keep our young people here. We don't drive them out of the province by making tuition outrageously unaffordable. And we also make sure that they have the opportunity to take the kinds of programs that these kinds of entrepreneurs are looking for. So right before the last election, we proposed 3,000 tech spaces. Since then, in post-secondary, since then, the provincial government has mostly cut that program. I think they've moved ahead with about 600, and we haven't heard anything about anything else beyond that since then. So they're not partnering with post-secondaries on that front. Finally, what we're talking about, probably not finally, I could probably go on much longer, but the innovation hub, the innovation district that we're talking about leading the creation of here in downtown Calgary would also help attract folks, and we need to work in a very intentional way with our post-secondary partners to help make that happen. And again, that's work that nobody in this UCP government is doing at all. And finally, quality of life. You bring these kinds of innovators and entrepreneurs to a place like Alberta and a place like Calgary, because we offer a quality of life that is not available in other parts of the country. And one of the key elements of that is ensuring that you have a diverse, vibrant, culturally robust downtown core. We had that in Calgary once. We can have a different version of it again. This is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, let alone in the country, and we have so much to work with, and this is how we're going to lead a lot of the economic diversification that Alberta needs to see. So thank you for listening to what turned into a 20-minute reaction. Answer.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to our next caller. Caller, your line should be open.
It is on.
Hi, this is Lisa Jones from the Edmonton Journal. Thanks, Joe, for commenting a little bit on the Calgary specific numbers in the Statistics Canada numbers that we saw today. I'm wondering, Ms. Notley, if you could comment on the province-wide numbers a little bit. We're seeing, and I know month-to-month numbers bounce around quite a bit, but we're seeing a pretty consistent decline in the unemployment rate in Alberta, and the government is touting this as proof that the economy is gaining momentum and turning a corner. What are your thoughts on those numbers today?
Well, I guess what I would say is that I hope to goodness that the economy is gaining momentum and turning the corner because we've had unprecedented levels of unemployment, unprecedented levels of economic slowdown. So when you are coming from the bottom of the pack, it's not surprising that sometimes your rate of growth will be amongst the fastest. But what we know is that the country as a whole is experiencing the lowest unemployment rate that it has seen since the 70s. And Alberta, while we are creating more jobs, and that's good news, Alberta is still behind the rest of the country. Calgary still has the lowest employment or the highest unemployment rate of any major city in the country. And Alberta as a whole is still has a significantly higher unemployment rate than the national average. There are more people in the Maritimes unemployed than in Alberta, but after that, everybody else is ahead of us. So I think sometimes it's important to look at context and look at what our missed opportunity is right now. And so we need to be intentional about driving through what is still a very structural change in our economy to ensure that there remains equity and that there remains long-term sustainable jobs for a large number of Albertans where they can earn enough to pay their mortgage and plan for their future and do all those things. So we're in a transition and we need a government to roll up its sleeves and actually engage in it.
Did you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Yeah, on that point, it's looking like across the country, the labor market is really getting squeezed. There's growth in wages, but in Alberta, that wage growth is the lowest. So I'm wondering if you can comment on that and what Alberta should be doing in terms of job training programs to help boost some of those employment numbers.
So what we know is a risk in Alberta is that a few, mostly owners in certain sectors are going to make a lot of money. But across the board, we're not going to see that increased GDP, that increased wealth shared with the majority of Albertans the way it should be. And so at the same time, what we know is happening is our economy is restructuring, and it's restructuring because oil and gas itself is restructuring. It's restructuring because tech is becoming a bigger and bigger, more important player. And it's restructuring, of course, as industries across the world react to the demands that climate change presents to us. So what we need and what we have the opportunity still to do in Alberta is to work really intentionally to support the transition within our workforce to the kind of skilled jobs that that business owners and entrepreneurs are demanding folks to take, while at the same time, in supporting the families of those workers while they get the training they need to be able to take up those opportunities. And so this is a piece that we're not hearing enough about. We're not hearing about it from the federal government. We're not hearing it about it certainly from the provincial government. And yet it's really critically important to help us attract that kind of diversified investment, and it's important to help deal with an equitable wage increase that will not happen in its absence, as you described.
Okay, we'll go to our next caller. Rick, your line should be open.
Hi, Ms. Donnelly. I see you've, it's only a preliminary, and there's details still to be worked out, but other than the $100 million for the downtown buildings, $55 million towards other costings that you can cost to implement this strategy fully?
Well, that's a good question. So as you know, the strategy itself includes about I think $175 million in current commitments. And it is true that there are other elements of it which is a little bit of a TBD, like for instance the partnership with post-secondary. That may or may not involve incremental investment. That's something that we'd have to engage in consultation. The areas where we talk about leveraging provincial funding, you may or may not know that we have already previously proposed a much more robust investment in affordable housing than what currently exists in Alberta. The UCP made dramatic cuts to that when they first got into government, and we would revisit that. And so, because we would be planning to invest more in affordable housing anyway, and because we have this work going on in Calgary, we would leverage that funding and target some of it to work alongside the conversion funding and the city funding and hopefully the federal funding and private sector funding to get more units per dollar out of what already existed. So that's why it's going to take a little bit of work to come up with the final numbers, because you have to sort of identify what you would have been spending anyway. But let me be clear, it's a bold plan, and we are open to continuing to talk to Calgarians and in the private sector, in the public sector, and other levels of government about ways in which to leverage what we've already put in there and potentially some more through other provincial efforts.
Did you have a follow-up, Rick?
I have a quick one. Does that include things like school boards? One of the reasons why people don't live downtown is because there are no places to put their kids to school. Would that be a strategy?
That is a very, very good point. And we didn't include that in the strategy because we've only had preliminary conversations with folks on this issue. But, that was absolutely something that came up in some of our consultations so far. So I think, when we get a chance to update this proposal and turn it into a more definitive, here is exactly what we'll do on the other fronts, you could see more work going on the matter of downtown education for sure. Because you nailed it. We need to get families down here, and it's hard to do if they're too far away from schools.
Do one more pass for question on the line or in person. And seeing none, that's all for today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of Albertans have already provided their idea for how we can build Alberta's future. You can too by going to albertasfuture.ca.